Chapter 1. After a car crash, Ethan Lancaster lost his memory. He remembered everyone except for Nina Hayes. Her, he had forgotten completely. He gripped the hand of the wealthy Liana Sterling, his gaze burning. "I like you. Be my girlfriend." Nina's hand, resting on the doorknob, froze. A dull ache pierced her heart. Everyone in Port City knew that Ethan Lancaster loved Nina Hayes to the bone. They were childhood sweethearts, but their social statuses were worlds apart. To marry her, Ethan had endured the family's brutal discipline 3 times, suffering 5 broken ribs. His mother, Mrs. Beatrice Lancaster, was furious at his refusal to bend. "Nina is the gardener's daughter. How could she possibly be fit to marry into the Lancaster family?" She'd lash out at Nina with vicious words. "Don't you ever look in the mirror? Who do you think you are? You must be insane to think you can climb the social ladder like this." Even coughing up blood, Ethan wouldn't relent. In this life, it has to be Nina and no one else. He went on a hunger strike, refusing even a drop of water for 10 whole days. Fearing for her son's life, Mrs. Lancaster finally relented and agreed to their marriage. But a sudden car crash shattered all their past vows of eternal love. Liana Sterling blushed and nodded shyly. Ethan was overjoyed, but then he caught sight of Nina outside the door. He immediately shot her a look of disgust. "Why are you here again? I will not marry you, not even if I have to face the family's punishment again." Then he turned to Liana with a gentle smile. "The person I like is Leah. She's my girlfriend now." Liana beamed, quickly planting a kiss on Ethan's cheek before darting out of the hospital room. A tightness gripped Nina's chest. She placed the pork rib soup she had woken up early to simmer on the table. "Have a bowl. I simmered it for 4 hours. The doctor said it would help with your recovery." Ethan frowned, looking at her with suspicion. "Even if you simmered it for 40 hours, I wouldn't drink it. I find it filthy." Nina's hand, holding the hot bowl, trembled. The scalding soup spilled over, instantly turning her palm red. Ethan sneered again. "Playing the victim? I really have to wonder why I ever fell in love with you. A poor gardener's daughter, dreaming of marrying rich and becoming a princess. Leah's parents and the Lancasters have been family friends for generations. If she hadn't been studying abroad, do you think you would have ever had a chance to sneak in?" Nina lowered her eyes, remembering his soft kisses on her lips. "Nina, I won't let you belittle yourself. Who says we can't be together?" Liana had returned at some point and now stood hesitantly at the door. "Can I come in? Am I interrupting?" Ethan waved her over. "Leah, come here, next to me." Then he coldly ordered Nina out. "Take your damn soup and get out. I don't want to see you again." As Nina walked past Liana, clutching the container, Liana deliberately slammed her shoulder into hers. Nina stumbled, her forehead striking the corner of the bed. Blood began to stream down. Liana pouted. "Sorry, Miss Hayes. You were in my way." Ethan pulled Liana into his arms and kissed her, right in front of Nina. Leaning on the wall for support, Nina struggled out of the room and slammed the door shut. The man's heavy breathing and the woman's faint moans assaulted Nina's ears. Tears she had held back for so long finally streamed down her face. She pulled out her phone and called Mrs. Lancaster. "I'm willing to leave Ethan." Mrs. Lancaster's voice was arrogant and lazy on the other end. "Name your price." Nina wiped her tears. "I want to take my parents abroad and never come back." Mrs. Lancaster didn't forget a final jab. "So that's the extent of your ambition, you pauper's spawn." Then, skeptically, she asked, "Ethan nearly died for the sake of marrying you. Why would he let you go now?" Through the small window on the hospital room door, Nina saw Ethan's hand roaming over Liana's slender waist. "That's all in the past. He loves Liana Sterling now." Mrs. Lancaster scoffed. "It's about time. The immigration process will take a month. I hope you don't go back on your word." "I won't regret it." A month. That was enough time to excise Ethan Lancaster from her life. Chapter 2. Nina returned alone to what was meant to be her and Ethan's marital home, a 3-story villa halfway up a mountain. Every chair, every table, every plant in the house had been personally chosen by her. On the wall of the high-ceilinged living room, their giant wedding portrait still hung. She brought over a ladder and painstakingly took it down, tossing it into the trash can in the backyard. She spent 3 full hours, erasing every trace of herself from the house. She threw the last of their photos together into a brazier, and the flames quickly devoured it. Nina laughed at herself mockingly. Ethan had already forgotten her. What was the point of all this? Her phone suddenly vibrated. It was Ethan. His voice was impatient. Get to the family estate? Now, Nina didn't want to face Mrs. Lancaster's scorn, nor did she want to see Ethan and Liana. But the immigration process still needed time. To avoid any complications, she had no choice but to go. She had barely pushed open the door and spoken a word when a slap from Mrs. Lancaster struck her across the face. Speak, was it you? Did you tamper with the elevator while Leah was in it? The slap was so sudden that Nina's left cheek immediately swelled and turned red. Her eyes burning, she looked at Ethan, who stood to the side. Ethan, even if you don't remember our love, you can't let people slander me like this, Ethan snorted coldly. Love? That was just a foolish whim of my youth. Liana looked innocent. Auntie Beatrice, the elevator suddenly plunged, and through the crack in the doors I saw Miss Hayes's back. Mrs. Lancaster patted Liana's back soothingly, then turned to Ethan. I've always said girls from poor families like her are bad seeds from birth. The moment she saw her dream of marrying into wealth was hopeless, she deliberately sabotaged the elevator to try and kill Leah. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he grabbed Nina by the collar. Still not admitting it. Then I'll make you feel the same terror Leah went through. He dragged her towards the elevator. Nina fell to her knees, clawing at his pant leg. She looked up, tears welling in her eyes. Ethan, I have claustrophobia, have you forgot? Ethan looked down on her. I'm glad I lost my memories of you. The elevator doors mercilessly clamped down on Nina's hand. She cried out in pain and pulled it back, watching helplessly as the doors slid shut. Ethan, let me out. Nina's cry was choked with sobs. From the other side of the door, Ethan's icy voice drifted in. Leah was lucky to only get a scare this time. Locking you in for 3 hours is a light punishment to teach you a lesson. In the stuffy, cramped space, Nina curled into a ball. When Ethan had first woken up from the crash and stared at her with a puzzled look, asking, "Who are you?" she had been suspicious. She couldn't believe that the Ethan who had loved her more than life itself would forget only her. Even when he confessed his feelings to Liana, even when he mocked her for being a gold digger, she had clung to a fantasy. Maybe he was just playing a joke on her. Maybe this was all a dream. When she woke up, he would be the same Ethan whose eyes were filled with nothing but her. But at this moment, as he ignored her pleas and cries, resolutely locking her in the elevator, she knew it was real. He had forgotten that Nina suffered from severe claustrophobia and forgotten that its cause was the time she saved him. That year, an 18-year-old Ethan had been kidnapped by his family's enemies. Nina had searched for a day and a night before finding him in a dry well, dozens of feet deep, in the countryside. She screamed for help, only to be caught by the kidnappers who had returned to the scene. They threw her into the well with him. She would never forget the putrid smell at the bottom of the dark well, the kidnappers' leering faces and filthy hands. By the time the Lancaster family found them by following the clues she had left, she had already collapsed from shock and dehydration. From that day on, she had suffered from severe claustrophobia. Any small, enclosed space would drag her mind back to that bottomless well. Open the door, her voice was hoarse as she beat her fists futilely against the sealed doors. Ethan, let me out. An overwhelming feeling of suffocation washed over her like a tide, drowning her last shred of consciousness. Chapter 3. Nina's eyes flew open. The ceiling reflected a face completely drained of color. Ethan was sitting by the bed. Seeing her awake, he seemed to let out a breath of relief. If Leah hadn't pleaded for you, I wouldn't have let you out so easily. Liana emerged from behind him, a harmless-looking smile on her face as she took Nina's hand. Ethan, darling, you really don't know how to treat a lady. It's not like Miss Hayes was trying to make things difficult for me. She's just jealous that I have someone who loves me. Ethan affectionately tapped her nose. Leah, you'll get taken advantage of if you're too kind and soft-hearted. I won't let you suffer. Watching them flirt as if no one else existed, Nina's heart felt like it was being sliced by a knife. Ethan took Liana's hand and started to leave. There's an auction today. I'll take you and buy you some nice things to make up for this. Liana's eyes widened. Ethan, darling, she turned back to Nina. Miss Hayes should come too. She was frightened and needs some compensation as well. Without waiting for an answer, she pulled Nina from the bed and dragged her into the car. The auction was crowded with the elite of Port City. They had all heard the stories of how Ethan had threatened to die to marry the gardener's daughter. But now, seeing him being so intimate with someone other than Nina, they began to whisper among themselves. Didn't they say the Lancaster heir was an infatuated fool, that he wouldn't marry anyone but that gardener's girl? Haven't you heard? Ethan got into a car accident and lost his memory, forgot everything about the past. Looks like the gardener's daughter's dreams have come to nothing. I heard that to save Ethan back then, the gardener's girl was raped by the kidnappers. How could a prestigious family like the Lancasters possibly accept her? Maybe the amnesia is just a convenient excuse. Ethan swayed, nearly tripping on the carpet. Liana tugged at his sleeve. Ethan, darling, was Miss Hayes really? You know, by the kidnappers? Nina followed behind them, every word falling into her ears. The auction house had reserved 3 seats for them. Liana naturally sat in the middle, separating Ethan and Nina. During the first half of the auction, Nina said nothing, neither raising a paddle nor making a bid. Liana, however, clung to Ethan's arm, chattering excitedly the entire time. Wow, an emerald necklace. Is that a Hessian jade bracelet? Ah, the heart of the ocean blue diamond bracelet. Ethan, his face full of adoration, bought everything she pointed at, no matter the high price. He glanced at the silent Nina beside him, his tone a mix of mockery and confusion. Nina, aren't you with me for the money? Since Leah is so happy, you can pick something and I'll buy it for you. Nina looked up. Ethan, I was never after your money. Besides, I've never been fond of luxury jewelry. Her voice trailed off as her eyes fixed on the display stage. Following her gaze, Liana saw it a plain, unremarkable bracelet. It lacked the warm subtlety of Hessian jade and the translucent grandeur of emerald. But it seemed Nina cared a great deal for this simple piece bracelet. She shot to her feet. Ethan, I want that bracelet, Ethan snorted. Just a moment ago, you were proclaiming you weren't some gold digger, and now you're eating your words. Fine, I'm a man of my word. I'll get it but Liana suddenly grabbed his hand. Ethan, darling, I really like this bracelet. Chapter 4. Everyone in the room held their breath, wondering which side Ethan would favor. The new flame or the old love? Nina dropped to one knee, her tone almost pleading. Ethan, that bracelet isn't valuable, it's just my grandmother's heirloom. She had lost it on the way to rescue Ethan all those years ago, and she had blamed herself for it ever since. So many times, she had dreamed of her grandmother's sorrowful face, as if she were chiding Nina for not cherishing the last thing she had left in this world. Liana tugged at his hand. Ethan, darling, I've been getting hurt so often lately. I want a peace bracelet to ward off bad luck. Nina suddenly whipped her head around and shot Liana a venomous glare. Isn't all the stuff he bought for you enough? Why do you have to fight me for this one thing? Liana seemed startled by her outburst, her eyes immediately filling with tears. Oh, Ethan, darling, just give it to Miss Hayes. It doesn't matter if I'm safe or not. She sounded so pitiful that Ethan's face softened with concern. He raised his paddle. $2 million between the new flame and the old love, Ethan's preference was clear to all. Nina stared at Ethan in utter disbelief, slowly raising her own paddle. $3 million. The crowd erupted in murmurs. The gardener's daughter is really overestimating herself, daring to compete with Mr. Lancaster's wealth. Ethan smiled contemptuously. $5 million? Nina's hand paused in midair, her voice trembling involuntarily. $5.5 million. Ethan raised an eyebrow. $8 million. Nina bit her lower lip so hard she thought it might bleed. Even if she had to sell everything she owned, she had to get her grandmother's heirloom back. $10 million. A flicker of derision crossed Ethan's half-closed eyes. He casually lifted his hand. The auctioneer beamed. Congratulations to Mr. Lancaster for lighting up the sky. The term meant he'd bid an outrageous price just to crush his opponent. He glanced at Nina, then let his gaze fall on the delighted Liana. Of course I want you to be safe and sound. Why would I care if anyone else lives or dies? Nina sank back into her seat, the lip she was biting so tightly now bleeding. She watched numbly as Ethan fastened the piece bracelet onto Liana's wrist. You silly girl, don't you dare get hurt again. Liana cheered, waving her hands to show off her trophy to the guests. Clang, the piece bracelet slipped from her slender wrist and crashed onto the floor. Nina shoved Liana aside, her eyes shooting daggers at her. You did that on purpose, didn't you? Liana waved her hands innocently. No, I didn't, I was just so happy So? Nina knelt, picking up the shattered pieces of the bracelet one by one, oblivious to her fingers being cut and bleeding. "Ouch," Liana cried out. "Ethan, darling, I think I sprained my ankle, it hurts so much." Ethan knelt beside her, his face etched with worry, and took her ankle in his hands. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." Liana grimaced. "It must be this unlucky bracelet, it made me get hurt." Hearing this, Ethan immediately had his men pull Nina away while he picked up the broken pieces. "Throw this where I'll never see it again." Nina refused to let them. She scrambled forward, kneeling on the ground and clutching the fragments to her chest. "You'll have to kill me first, no one is touching it." A cold glint flashed in Ethan's eyes. "Nina, are you insane? It's just a broken bracelet, you're making a fool of yourself." He grabbed her by the collar, dragged her all the way to the auction stage, and threw her down. "You want to throw away your dignity? Fine, I'll help you." He turned to the guests. "Today, my girlfriend Liana Sterling found some jewelry she loves. When she's happy, I'm happy. So, I've prepared a little something for everyone here. A gift for all to share." Chapter 5. On the large screen at the auction, a video began to play on a loop, showing Nina's humiliating and disheveled state while trapped in the elevator. The entire hall erupted in an uproar. Nina stared blankly at Liana, who was nestled in Ethan's arms, smugly raising an eyebrow at her. The favored one is always fearless. As Ethan left with Liana in his arms, he whispered in her ear, "Even though I don't remember being with you, my phone is full of photos and videos. If you dare to hurt Leah again, I guarantee the next video won't be as tame as today's." Nina's nails dug into her palms, and the hand cut by the bracelet fragments trembled uncontrollably. On the way back, Nina received a call from the ski club. "Miss Hayes, the ski trip to Switzerland that you and your fiancé, Mr. Ethan Lancaster, booked is scheduled to depart tomorrow." Nina paused for a moment. "I'm sorry, I'm afraid we'll have to cancel the trip." Although she dreaded returning to the Lancaster estate, she had to go to confirm the immigration details with Mrs. Lancaster. When she entered the house, Ethan and Liana were being affectionate with each other. Seeing her, Liana ran over enthusiastically, as if she had completely forgotten what happened at the auction. "Miss Hayes, Ethan, darling, says you're an excellent skier. Could you teach me when we go to Switzerland tomorrow?" Nina coldly shook off her hand. "Sorry, I've already canceled the trip with the club." Ethan, flipping through a magazine, didn't even look up. "Leah has never been to Switzerland. We'll take this opportunity to take her there for a relaxing trip." Nina's expression was blank. "Then I wish you both a pleasant time." Ethan looked up and frowned. "You're going too. Leah needs someone to look after her. You're the gardener's daughter, so you must know how to serve people, right?" "But..." Ding. Nina looked down at her phone. Ethan had sent her several of her own nude photos. "If you don't go, I don't mind sending these to your parents." Nina's face turned ashen. Ethan, his face twisted, becoming exceptionally ugly. Her parents had been hardworking and honest their whole lives. They didn't deserve to be plagued by rumors and attacks. Defeated, Nina relented. "Fine, I'll go." Skiing in Switzerland was an annual trip for Ethan and Nina. What was once their private world for two now included a third person, Liana. This would probably be her last time skiing with Ethan. She decided to temporarily set aside her resentment and bid a proper farewell to their dying love. The ski resort was bustling with people. Nina executed a beautiful parallel turn and came to a steady stop in the runoff area. She took off her goggles and looked out over the Alps. Suddenly, her peripheral vision caught a dangerous situation on the slope above. Liana was leaning back, screaming. As she hurtled down the slope toward the runoff area at an ever-increasing speed, Nina's heart leaped into her throat. "Watch out!" At almost the same instant, Ethan's figure shot out from behind her like an arrow released from a bow. Liana was completely out of control. "Ethan, darling, save me." With years of skiing experience, Ethan quickly judged her trajectory. Just as he was about to reach Liana, the corner of his eye caught Nina's position. In that split second, he made his choice. "Get out of the way," he roared in Nina's direction, forcefully extending an arm and shoving her with all his might. Nina instantly lost her balance. Her skis went out of control, and she fell heavily toward the edge of the slope. A cold, piercing sensation was followed by a searing pain that exploded in her palm. Ugh. Chapter 6. Nina cried out in pain, curling up. She struggled to lift her right hand. The thick ski glove was sliced open, revealing a long, gruesome gash across the palm. The intense pain made her vision go black. Through the tear in the glove, she could vaguely see the flesh underneath, torn open. Nina trembled, looking up in disbelief. A few feet away, Ethan had successfully caught the screaming, out-of-control Liana, holding her tightly. Nina suddenly remembered her first time skiing with Ethan. She had accidentally strayed from the beginner's slope onto an advanced one and been knocked down by another skier. Ethan, like a madman, had gotten into a fight with the person, his eyes bloodshot as he held Nina. "Nina, promise me you'll never put yourself in danger." "I can't live without you, I can't," and this time, he was the one who had pushed her into danger. Liana was clearly terrified, clinging to Ethan's clothes and sobbing loudly. Ethan was breathing heavily, patting her back and murmuring, it's okay," while anxiously checking her for injuries. After confirming that Liana had only minor scrapes, his gaze finally moved past her trembling shoulders to Nina, who was curled up on the snow a few meters away. She was looking down at her bleeding hand, the bright red blood staining the white snow a startling crimson. The look of anxiety and comfort on Ethan's face froze, and his pupils contracted sharply. Nina slowly looked up, her eyes meeting his. They were filled with a mixture of pain, confusion, and the icy sting of betrayal. As the doctor treated Nina's wound, she trembled all over from the pain but bit her lip hard and said nothing. Meanwhile, Liana had a shallow cut on her forearm from an icicle. She whimpered in Ethan's arms, making such a fuss that the doctor's movements slowed as he disinfected the wound. The clinic at the resort was small, with only one operating room and one attending physician. The doctor recommended operating on Nina first. "This young lady's palm needs to be surgically stitched immediately. Every moment of delay increases the risk. The other young lady's wound is not serious and can be stitched later." Liana immediately burst into tears. "Ethan, darling, will my arm have a scar? Does that mean I can't wear dresses anymore? Why?" Ethan thought for a moment, then walked over to Nina. "Can we let Leah have the surgery first? She's timid and cares a lot about her appearance. And you're very strong." Nina tore her gaze from her wound and looked at the man she had once loved so deeply. A flicker of unease, almost imperceptible, crossed Ethan's eyes. "Don't worry, our engagement is still on. I'll marry you when we get back." Liana's eyes widened. "Ethan, darling, isn't this what you've always wanted? To marry into a wealthy family, to be a rich man's wife. What does a ruined hand matter?" Nina laughed, and as she laughed, tears streamed down her face. "Ethan, do you remember my dream was to become a pianist? Are you trying to make it so I can never touch the keys again for the rest of my life?" "Ethan, I'm begging you. For the sake of all our years together, let me have the surgery first." But no matter how much Nina cried, pleaded, and screamed hysterically, Ethan never looked at her again. He carried Liana into the operating room, kissed her forehead, and comforted her softly. "Be a good girl and listen to the doctor. I'll be with you the whole time." Before the operating room door closed, Liana shot her a triumphant glance. It was the look of a victor. In this contest for Ethan, Nina had lost completely and utterly. An hour later, when the doctor tried to reconnect Nina's severed nerves, it was too late. The middle-aged doctor shook his head regretfully. "I'll stitch it up nicely. At least you still have the hand." Tears streamed from Nina's eyes. She pounded the bed, a low, guttural sob escaping her throat. Chapter 7 On the flight back, Nina sat silently in her seat. Perhaps out of guilt, Ethan, for once, ignored Liana and sat next to Nina. He pushed the strawberry milk Liana had given him in front of Nina. "I heard you haven't eaten. This is your favorite." Nina stared out the window at the blue sky and white clouds. "You actually remember what I like to drink." "Heh." Ethan's hand froze. "I saw it in my phone's notes." Nina smiled faintly. "Then delete it. Why force yourself to remember something you've already forgotten?" Her attitude was completely unexpected. He suddenly grabbed her wrist. "Nina, From the back seat, Liana suddenly covered her mouth, ran to the restroom, and began to retch. Ethan's expression changed, and he rushed after her. "Leah, why are you throwing up? What's wrong?" Liana rinsed her mouth, returned to her seat, and shyly stared at her flat stomach. Ethan was stunned. "Are you pregnant?" Liana blushed, neither confirming nor denying it. Overjoyed, Ethan immediately had someone switch Liana's seat to be next to him. The plane landed smoothly. Outside the cabin, a large crowd was waiting. Mrs. Lancaster beamed as she took Liana's hand. "I'm so happy today. I had someone prepare bird's nest soup." "Let's go home," Ethan tenderly supported Liana by the waist, completely forgetting about Nina's severely injured hand. Watching the happy scene of Mrs. Lancaster, Ethan, and Liana, it was clear they were the real family. She was just the daughter of a servant who had briefly lived an unattainable dream. Now the dream was over, but the price was a ruined right hand. Nina followed them back to the Lancaster estate. She was there to pick up her immigration documents. In the operating room, she had received a call from Mrs. Lancaster. "I had it rushed. The immigration papers are ready ahead of schedule. Are you prepared to leave, Ethan?" Nina had stopped the doctor from giving her anesthesia. She wanted to feel the bone-deep pain, to force herself to leave without a second thought. Almost the entire Lancaster clan was gathered at the estate, seating Liana in the center. The elders fussed over her, and her peers asked all sorts of questions. Nina silently retreated to a corner, wanting only to be invisible. But Liana wouldn't let her go that easily. She walked up to Nina in front of everyone, taking her hand with an intimate tone. "Miss Hayes, Auntie Beatrice said she's holding an engagement party for me and Ethan, darling, tomorrow. You have to come." Several of Nina's Lancaster peers, who had always looked down on her for her gardener-daughter background and her near marriage to the future Lancaster heir, now saw their chance. "Leah, you just got back from abroad, so you don't know. This Nina's parents are both servants in the Lancaster household. What right does she have to attend your and Ethan's engagement party?" "Well, she could attend. To serve tea, pour water, and clean up. We can ask the butler later if they need an extra hand." A wave of laughter spread through the room. "I thought a sparrow had flown up the branch and turned into a phoenix. Turns out it's just a black chicken, ha-ha-ha." Nina looked past the crowd and saw her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, standing awkwardly by the door. "I'm sorry, Miss Sterling. I have something to do tomorrow. I'm afraid I can't attend the engagement party." After speaking, she walked around Liana, preparing to leave with her parents, but someone stuck out a leg and tripped her. Nina pitched forward, instinctively using her hands to break her fall. The newly stitched wound instantly tore open, and blood soaked through the gauze. "My Nina," Mrs. Hayes pushed through the crowd and rushed to Nina's side. "I won't let you bully my daughter." Chapter 8. Nina looked up at her mother in surprise. For as long as she could remember, her parents had worked for the Lancasters. They were timid, always deferential in the face of trouble, and their constant lesson to her had been endure. But at this moment, though her mother was trembling, she still bravely shielded Nina in her arms. Mr. Hayes came over as well, helping both his wife and Nina to their feet. "The Lancasters look down on the poor like this. And to think I worked diligently for them for decades." "We quit today," Mrs. Hayes chimed in. "That's right, we quit. Let's go." Liana, who had been silent, suddenly let out a small "oh" and began looking around anxiously. "My emerald necklace is gone. Where is it? Ethan, darling, spent $20 million on it for me." She ran up to Nina. "Miss Hayes, if you like it, I can ask Ethan, darling, to buy you one too. Could you please just give mine back to me?" Everyone's gaze fell on Nina, their eyes filled with suspicion and contempt. It's true what they say, poor environments breed vile people. When her dream of marrying into wealth was shattered, she resorted to theft. "Nina Hayes, you've got some nerve. The lives of your whole family aren't even worth $20 million, are they?" Someone taunted Mr. and Mrs. Hayes. "Just a moment ago you were acting so high and mighty. Turns out the daughter you raised is a little thief." Mr. and Mrs. Hayes stomped their feet in desperation. "My daughter is not a thief. She would never steal anything." But the surrounding crowd's insults and accusations drowned out their explanations and denials. Nina's wound was still bleeding. Her lips were pale as she struggled to speak. "I didn't see any emerald necklace. I didn't take it. Please move." Liana's expression changed instantly. She crossed her arms and smirked at her. "If you don't hand it over willingly, Miss Hayes, then we'll just have to search you." Nina's head snapped up and she glared at her. "You dare?" Liana scoffed. "Why wouldn't I dare?" She waved over the bodyguards. "Search her thoroughly. Inside and out." Mr. and Mrs. Hayes were pulled away. Nina curled up on the floor, hugging herself tightly. The bodyguards' hands roamed over her, freely violating her body and her dignity. Nina's mind was dragged back to that bottomless, dry well, the rough hands, the foul-smelling bodies. She screamed with all her might. Ethan, hearing the commotion, Ethan came down from the second floor, frowning. "What's going on?" Liana clung to his arm pitifully. "Miss Hayes stole my necklace. I begged her to give it back, but she refused." Ethan glanced at Nina. "Give the necklace back to Leah. Otherwise, none of the three of you are leaving." Nina looked at her elderly parents being restrained, her eyes filled with tears and indignation. She stood up straight and, under the watchful eyes of everyone, began to take off her clothes, piece by piece. The noisy crowd gradually fell silent, leaving only the soft rustle of clothing. When she was down to her underwear, Ethan yelled, "Stop!" A flicker of pity crossed his eyes. "Leah, if it's lost, I'll buy you a new one, something even more expensive and better. Let them go." But Liana was relentless. "But she..." Ethan's eyes darkened. "Are you not listening to me anymore? Or do you want to postpone the engagement party?" Liana stomped her foot in frustration. "Fine, for the sake of Ethan, darling, pleading for you, I'll let you off the hook." Nina bent down, picking up her scattered clothes with one hand, and used the other, bloody hand to wipe the tears from her face. Ethan took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Let's get you to a hospital. Your hand..." Without even looking up, Nina said, "Thank you, but I don't need your concern." Chapter 9. Ethan's hand remained frozen in midair, only slowly lowering after Nina was long gone. He glanced down at his chest, where his heart ached with a dull pain. Liana was still the center of attention, her hand resting on her flat stomach, the corners of her eyes lifted in triumph. Mrs. Lancaster came over and nudged his arm. "What are you daydreaming about? Don't tell me that little vixen has bewitched you again." Ethan shook his head blankly. "Mom, I think I've messed things up." Mrs. Lancaster frowned. "What nonsense are you talking about? Go keep my future daughter-in-law and grandbaby company." He took a deep breath and mustered his courage. "Mom, actually, I didn't..." Ah, blood! A girl sitting next to Liana suddenly shot up, pointing at a patch of blood on the floor and screaming in terror. Liana felt beneath her. It was soaked in blood. In a flurry of panic, everyone rushed Liana onto an ambulance, with Ethan and Mrs. Lancaster following. On the way, Liana clutched Ethan's hand tightly. "Ethan, darling, am I going to die?" Ethan squeezed her hand back, comforting her softly. "No, you won't, I'm here." "Her period?" Mrs. Lancaster, holding Liana's lab report, nearly collapsed. "Are you saying Leah isn't pregnant? That blood was from her period?" The doctor nodded with certainty. "Yes, it was just a particularly heavy flow." Hearing this news, Ethan felt a wave of relief. Things hadn't reached a point of no return after all. "Mom, you take care of Leah. I need to ask the doctor something." Nina's wound had completely torn open and had to be re-stitched. The good news was that the surgeon who stitched her up said her hand could still be saved. He pointed to a man with gold-rimmed glasses on the cover of a medical journal. "You can try finding him abroad. His skills are world-class. He might be able to restore your hand completely." This was the best news Nina had heard in a long time. She excitedly grabbed the doctor's hand, thanking him repeatedly. She was about to look up the man with the gold-rimmed glasses when she saw Ethan furtively slip into a doctor's office. Nina tiptoed over and listened through the crack in the door, hearing Ethan talking to the attending physician from his car accident. "Doctor, I need you to find a way to forge a medical record stating that I've recovered my memory." The doctor looked around nervously. "Mr. Lancaster, helping you fake the amnesia diagnosis already put my entire career on the line. And now I heard you're getting engaged. Isn't that a good thing?" Ethan gripped his wrist, his voice low. "I don't want to play this amnesia game anymore. Things are getting out of my control. It's time to end this charade. Money is no object. Just do it. I'll take responsibility for the consequences." The doctor nodded reluctantly. "I'll do my best, but it will take at least 2 days." Ethan rubbed his throbbing temples. "The sooner, the better." The conversation continued, but Nina couldn't hear another word. Her mind went completely blank. She swayed and collapsed onto a bench in the hallway, so that was it. Ethan had never lost his memory. He remembered she had claustrophobia. He remembered the bracelet her grandmother had left her. He remembered everything, all the pain and humiliation he had inflicted on her recently had been done while he was completely lucid. In that moment, Nina wished he had truly lost his memory. She curled up on the bench, trembling uncontrollably, and sobbed until she was breathless. "Nina," Mrs. Lancaster walked over. Here are the immigration documents for you and your parents. You can take them and leave Port City whenever you're ready." She handed her a check. $20 million, enough for you all to live comfortably for the rest of your lives. Nina sat up straight and wiped away her tears. She took the documents and the check. Life is truly unpredictable. I thought Ethan's accident had stolen my happiness, but it turns out it was heaven giving me a chance to start over. She took one last look at Ethan through the crack in the door and walked away from the hospital without looking back. Ethan Lancaster, farewell forever. Chapter 10, Mrs. Lancaster watched Nina's resolute figure disappear. Good riddance. Even if Leah isn't carrying our Lancaster family's child, she is the only daughter-in-law I will ever acknowledge. When Ethan came out of the doctor's office, he caught a glimpse of a back that looked strikingly like Nina's, vanishing around the corner of the hallway. He hurried over and asked his mother, "Mom, was that Nina?" Mrs. Lancaster waved her hand dismissively. "What, Nina? You're seeing things. Now hurry up and go see Leah. She's been crying out for you." Ethan waved his hand impatiently. "It's not like it's a serious illness. What is she doing lingering in the hospital? You can take her home." He stared down the long hallway, a growing sense of unease creeping into his heart. Although the doctor had promised to forge a report of his memory recovery as soon as possible, which he could then show to Nina, he knew what he had to do. He would blame everything he had done on the amnesiac Ethan, and Nina would surely choose to forgive him. Ethan called over a few of his close friends who were in on the secret, and they discussed how to make up for his neglect and cruelty towards Nina. "Ethan, didn't you say you were getting tired of Nina? You wanted to use the car crash to fake amnesia and have some fun for a while." "Yeah, man, it hasn't even been that long. Why recover your memory so soon? We haven't even had a chance to introduce you to some new models." Ethan sighed and recounted everything that had happened since his amnesia. At first, it was great. Liana spent a long time abroad, so she's passionate and uninhibited, not like Nina, who's innocent and conservative. A lot of things I could never bring myself to do with her, I could do with Liana as a substitute. Gradually, I got carried away, and it was like I really did forget Nina. I did a lot of things that hurt her, her hand. I never meant for that to happen. On the plane back from Switzerland, he saw the look of utter despair in Nina's eyes, and in that moment, he snapped out of it. Reflecting on his absurd behavior, he decided to confess everything to her. Even if Nina hit him or cursed at him, he wouldn't complain. But then Liana suddenly threw up, acting as if she were pregnant, and he was thrown back into indecision. The result was that he missed his chance to come clean to Nina. After returning to the country, things spiraled completely out of control. Mrs. Lancaster was convinced Liana was the future daughter-in-law of the Lancaster family, and Liana had even publicly humiliated Nina. And at that time, he was still in his amnesiac state, so he could only watch as she was wrongly accused and searched. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, consumed by regret. "I regret it. I have to recover my memory, immediately, and get my life back on track." The group fell silent for a moment before someone asked timidly, "Ethan, you faked it so well, you even caused Nina to completely lose her hope of becoming a pianist. Do you think she'll forgive you?" Another person stammered, "I just asked my girlfriend. She said if she were Nina, she would run far away and make sure you could never find her." Ethan's heart lurched, and he shot up from his seat. "That's why I can't let Nina know I was faking it." He stood up and paced back and forth. "In 3 days, it's my engagement party with Liana. I'll stage a small accident that day, recover my memory, and then propose to Nina in front of everyone." Ethan was firmly convinced that as long as he was sincere enough, Nina would return to his side without any resentment. He even imagined Nina's face, tear-streaked with joy, upon learning he had recovered his memory. He called his assistant. "I don't care what it takes or how much it costs. Find someone to repair that shattered piece bracelet and have it delivered to the estate in 3 days." After hanging up, he let out a long, deep breath. Chapter 11, Ethan received a call from Mrs. Lancaster, telling him to be at the Beryl Hotel's private suite 888 at 6 o'clock sharp. When Ethan walked in wearing casual clothes, Mrs. Lancaster immediately frowned. She ran over and tugged at his sleeve. "Didn't I tell you to dress more formally? You look like you're out for a stroll, not meeting the parents." Then, with a forced smile, she turned to Liana's parents, who were seated at the head of the table. Our Ethan says we're all family now, so there's no need to stand on ceremony. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling looked at the handsome Ethan and nodded with satisfaction. As long as the children are happy, we parents have no objections. Looking at the two happy families and then at Liana, who sat beside him blushing with anticipation, Ethan finally realized what was happening. This was a formal dinner for the Lancaster and Sterling in-laws. He frowned. "Mom, why did you invite them without discussing it with me first?" Mrs. Lancaster clicked her tongue. "We decided this morning, didn't we? You and Leah will be engaged in 3 days, and then we'll discuss the wedding." Liana came over and pulled him into a seat. "Ethan, darling, my parents were so happy when they heard we were getting engaged." But Ethan's face hardened. "The engagement was your decision. Did you ask for my opinion?" Hearing this, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling's faces immediately darkened. "HMPH, is our precious daughter not good enough for your Lancaster family? I say we call off this engagement. And while we're at it, let's cancel our business partnership as well." Mrs. Lancaster shot to her feet. "Oh, it's perfectly normal for young couples to have a little tiff." She then turned and feigned a scolding tone with Ethan. "Ethan, a wonderful girl like Leah is going to marry into our Lancaster family. You should be toasting your future in-laws." Ethan saw his mother's fawning smile and understood that the Lancaster family was no longer the powerhouse it had been when his father was alive. The Sterlings were still willing to partner with them, partly because of their long-standing family friendship, and partly, he suspected, because they saw him as their future son-in-law. He thought for a moment. Since the doctor said it would take a few days to forge the report, he decided to swallow his anger and sit down. Liana then coaxed her father. "Ethan, darling, is just like that. You're his elder, how can you be angry with him?" Only then did Mr. Sterling's anger subside. During the meal, Liana's mother casually brought up Ethan and Nina. "I heard your Ethan endured the family discipline just to marry that gardener's daughter." Mrs. Lancaster quickly denied it. "That's just a rumor. Why would our Ethan ever be interested in someone from such a lowly family? She was the one who was obsessed with him, throwing herself at him." Liana also chimed in with a sneer. "Exactly. Ethan, darling, was just playing with that gardener's girl. When he got tired of her, he dumped her." Ethan, who had been eating in silence, slammed his chopsticks on the table. "I'm full. Enjoy the rest of your meal." The lively conversation came to an abrupt halt. Everyone stared. Just as Ethan reached the elevator, Mrs. Lancaster caught up and blocked his way. "Ethan, what do you think you're doing? The elders haven't even finished eating. People will say the Lancasters have no manners." Ethan, with his hands in his pockets, glanced at the slightly ajar door of the private room and deliberately raised his voice. "I have no manners. What about the people who gossip behind others' backs? They're the ones with no manners." Mrs. Lancaster was at a loss for words, able only to watch as Ethan stepped into the elevator and the doors closed. The elevator descended from the 28th floor, but when it reached the ground floor, the doors didn't open. Ethan repeatedly pressed the open button, but the metal doors remained stubbornly shut. The fluorescent light overhead flickered and then went out with a pop, plunging the small space into darkness. It felt as if most of the air had been sucked out. Ethan's brow twitched violently as he fumbled for the emergency call button. After a long pause, a voice came through. "Hello, sir. The elevator has malfunctioned. We are doing our best to repair it. Please wait patiently." Frustrated, Ethan tore off his tie and leaned against the metal wall, taking deep, ragged breaths. Images of a pitch-black dry well, overgrown weeds, and thick ropes flashed through his mind. Chapter 12. That year, Ethan had just turned 18, still a fresh-faced teenager. He remembered it was a Friday after school. He and Nina were walking home to the estate, their backpacks slung over their shoulders. The driver followed slowly behind them, and despite several prompts, Ethan refused to get in the car. "Nina and I are going for a walk. We'll get in when we're tired." They walked and chattered endlessly, talking about everything from a difficult math problem in class to the terrible steak in their lunchboxes. They ended up in a heated argument over the handsome new star student in the next class, folding their arms and refusing to speak to each other. A van with its license plate covered screeched to a halt beside them. Several masked men jumped out and dragged Ethan into the vehicle. It all happened so fast that by the time Nina and the driver reacted, the kidnappers and Ethan had vanished around the corner. Mrs. Lancaster cried until she fainted, offering $1 million reward for any information. Nina hid in her room, crying, consumed by guilt. She kept thinking that if she hadn't deliberately praised the new student for being so handsome and smart, Ethan wouldn't have sulked and walked so far away from her. Her parents tried to comfort her. The Lancaster family is huge. It must be their enemies. How could a young girl like you possibly save the young master? Nina sobbed, "If I hadn't been so far from him, I could have grabbed him when the kidnappers were dragging him away. It's all my fault for 3 full days." There was no word from Ethan. Nina was distracted at school during the day and tossed and turned at night, unable to sleep. Finally, late on the 3rd night, she snuck out to look for Ethan herself. Following a lead she had overheard during the day, she searched with a flashlight for a day and a night. Just as she was about to collapse from exhaustion, she heard a faint cry for help coming from a dry well. Overjoyed, Nina leaned over the edge of the well and yelled down to Ethan, "Don't be afraid, I'll go get help." But the next second, a club struck her from behind, and she blacked out. When she woke up, she was lying at Ethan's feet. Ethan looked helpless. "You fool, why did you come alone? Now we're both tied up." But Nina smiled. "This way you won't be bored. I'm here to keep you company." They looked at each other and burst out laughing. But they had underestimated the kidnappers' cruelty. One moment they were celebrating their reunion, and the next, Nina was being dragged into a corner. Ethan's shouts and Nina's screams couldn't stop the kidnappers' brutal assault. By the time the Lancaster family found the well, following the trail Nina had left, Ethan was already in shock from dehydration. They found a disheveled Nina nearby, trembling and in a daze. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes wept as they held their terrified daughter. The first thing Ethan asked when he woke up was about Nina. Mrs. Lancaster told him she had arranged for Nina to receive psychological treatment. "Oh, Ethan, you scared your mother to death. Don't worry, I gave the gardener and his wife a raise. It's a small reward and compensation for them." Nina took a 6-month leave from school. When she returned, she was withdrawn and melancholic. Even though they weren't in the same class, Ethan waited for her every day to walk to and from school, trying all sorts of things to make her happy. With Ethan's constant companionship and guidance, Nina gradually emerged from the darkness of that trauma. She became cheerful and talkative again, but she was left with a permanent case of claustrophobia. The fluorescent light above him buzzed. The rescue outside was taking a long time. Ethan's breathing grew slower, and the lack of oxygen made him dizzy. "Nina!" Before he lost consciousness, an image of Nina's terrified and desperate eyes as the kidnappers dragged her away flashed before him. Chapter 13, "Nina," Ethan cried out as he woke from his stupor. Mrs. Lancaster patted his hand, her face etched with worry. "Are you okay, son?" Liana threw herself into his arms, her voice frantic. "Ethan, darling, you scared me to death." Ethan rubbed his sore temples. "How long was I trapped in the elevator?" Liana glanced at the time. "About 15 minutes in total. It's all the fault of these rescue teams. They're as slow as snails." Ethan was surprised. "Only 15 minutes?" He had only been trapped for 15 minutes, and he had already been on the verge of a breakdown. He couldn't imagine how Nina, with her severe claustrophobia, had endured those agonizing 3 hours. His heart felt like it was being pricked by countless needles. Liana placed her hand on his pale face. "Ethan, darling, you look terrible. We should go to the hospital." But Ethan suddenly grabbed her wrist. "I'm asking you, that day you were trapped in the elevator, did you really see Nina?" Liana froze. "That day, I saw Miss Hayes's back." Ethan squeezed her wrist slightly, and Liana immediately cried out. "Ethan, darling, you're hurting me." Ethan forced her to look at him. "I'll ask you one more time. Are you sure the person you saw was Nina?" Liana's lips moved, but her eyes darted away. Mrs. Lancaster quickly pulled her away. "Ethan, I've watched Leah grow up. She's not the kind of child who lies. It's that gardener's daughter. She's been a bad influence since she was little, seducing you." Ethan frowned, cutting his mother off. "Mom, have you forgotten that Nina went to save me all by herself? Without her, I might have been killed by the kidnappers. And her name is Nina Hayes. Stop calling her the gardener's daughter all the time." Mrs. Lancaster looked at him suspiciously. "Ethan, didn't you lose your memory of everything about her?" Ethan was at a loss for words, finally mumbling that he had overheard the servants talking. Mrs. Lancaster pouted. They must have been put up to it by her and her parents, trying to guilt trip you into marrying into our family. Ethan sighed. All right, Mom, I'm fine, you should go home. I have something to do, so I'm leaving. Liana rushed to support him. Ethan, darling, where are you going? I'll go with you. Ethan quickened his pace, shrugging her off. It's a private matter. Liana stared at his retreating back, lost in thought. How had Ethan, who had been so doting just a few days ago, suddenly changed? She turned to the equally puzzled Mrs. Lancaster. Auntie Beatrice, is my engagement to Ethan, darling, still on? My parents have already told all our relatives and friends to come to our engagement party the day after tomorrow. Mrs. Lancaster snapped back to reality. Of course, it's still on. Ethan probably just got a little spooked from being trapped in the elevator. He'll be fine after a good night's sleep. Liana breathed a sigh of relief. I hope nothing else goes wrong. Nina, Auntie Beatrice, do you know where she went? Mrs. Lancaster looked confident. She and her useless parents are never coming back. You just focus on marrying our Ethan and giving us a big, healthy grandson. Only then did Liana feel truly at ease. She was 3 years younger than Ethan and had adored him since she was a little girl, always trailing behind him, calling out, Ethan, darling. But Ethan had never given her the time of day. His eyes were only for that gardener's daughter. She had thrown tantrums at home, crying, What do I have that's worse than that poor girl? I won't marry anyone but Ethan. Darling, her parents, at their wits' end, had sent her abroad to get her away from Ethan. But when she heard about Ethan's car accident, she had flown back overnight and rushed to the hospital. When Ethan woke up, he had forgotten all about the Nina he had cherished and grabbed Liana's hand, telling her he liked her. Liana was ecstatic and had agreed to be his girlfriend without a moment's hesitation. Her lifelong wish was about to come true, and she wouldn't let anything go wrong now. Chapter 14. After a flight of over 10 hours, the plane landed smoothly. Nina looked out at the completely unfamiliar country and city, feeling a sense of relief she had never experienced before. On the plane, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes had been worried, afraid of the language barrier, and not being able to adapt to a new life. Nina patted their hands reassuringly. I'm here, aren't I? Besides, Chinese is an international language now. A lot of foreigners understand it. When they heard that there was a world-renowned doctor here who might be able to heal her hand, they finally relaxed. Wherever the three of us are, that's home. Before leaving, Nina had already contacted a landlord and rented a small villa in the city center. After settling her parents in, she was eager to find the doctor from the magazine cover. The sooner she had a consultation, the greater the chance of a cure. She went to the hospital at the address her doctor in Port City had given her. Excuse me, where is Dr. Arson's office? The nurse pointed to the end of the hall. But Dr. Arson just got out of surgery, so he's probably sleeping. He has a terrible temper when he's woken up. I wouldn't recommend going to see him now. Nina nodded her thanks. Although she felt it was rude to disturb someone's rest, she was too anxious to know if her hand could be healed. Nina hesitated at the office door for a few minutes, but couldn't resist knocking. Hello, is Dr. Arson in? No response. Nina knocked again, a little louder. Hello, I'm looking for Dr. Arson. The door flew open, and a man with gold-rimmed glasses and slightly disheveled hair glared at her. Nina's heart raced. Excuse me, are you Dr. Arson? The man adjusted his glasses and retorted in a perfect British accent. Did no one tell you that waking a doctor who has been on his feet in an operating room all night is like waking a sleeping lion? Nina's face flushed red, and she stammered an apology. I'm so sorry, I was a bit anxious. The man glanced at her. Japanese? Nina turned her head and muttered in Low Chinese. That was quite a rude thing to say. The man was taken aback and immediately asked in Chinese, You're Chinese. Nina's eyes widened. You speak Chinese? The man raised an eyebrow. My mother is from Sichuan. I used to go back with her to visit my grandparents all the time when I was little. He extended his hand. Hello, you can call me by my Chinese name Gu Chen. Nina smiled and shook his hand. Nina Hayes. The nurse in the distance looked on in astonishment. Someone had actually survived waking Dr. Arson and come out unscathed. Doctor. Cole made a please come in gesture, and Nina smiled her thanks. As soon as she sat down, she extended her right hand to him. Dr. Liu recommended you to me. He said your skills are world-class and that you might be able to help me. Dr. Cole, or Arson as he was known here, carefully examined the wound on her palm. The nerves aren't completely dead. The doctor who performed your surgery must have done his best. Nina eagerly asked, so, is it possible to reconnect the nerves? Can my hand fully recover? Arson didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked her how she got injured. Nina stared at the scar, her eyes gradually turning pink. She didn't tell Arson about how Ethan had pushed her away to save Liana, causing her hand to be sliced by an ice skate. She had only just met Arson and didn't want to reopen her wounds for a stranger. I was careless while skiing and cut it. She said it casually, but Arson's face suddenly turned cold. He stood up and showed her the door. You can leave. I won't operate on you, even if I'm confident I can make it recover. Nina frowned. Why, aren't you a doctor? Isn't it your duty to save lives and heal the injured? Arson looked up. I won't operate on someone who doesn't cherish their own hands. Even if you heal, you still won't treasure them, will you? Nina immediately retorted, how can you say I don't cherish my hands? My dream is to be a pianist, but Arson didn't want to hear anymore. Please leave or I'll call security. Tears welled up in Nina's eyes, but she resignedly turned and left. The nurse pouted. I knew no one could break Dr. Arson's woken up grumpy curse. Chapter 15, Nina sat dejectedly on a bench at a street corner, the tears she had been holding back finally streaming down her face. She would rather Arson have told her that he couldn't heal her hand. Why give her hope, only to shatter it himself? First, it was Ethan, who made her believe she had a lifetime of support and love, only to destroy her dreams for the future with lies. Now it was Arson. He could clearly heal her hand, yet he refused her with such a slanderous excuse. She sat there until the sun began to set before finally getting up to leave. While waiting at a red light, an out-of-control SUV suddenly swerved towards the other side of the street. A little boy holding a balloon was standing there, looking around, completely unaware of the approaching danger. Watch out! Without a moment's hesitation, Nina ran into the road, scooped up the little boy, and dove to the side. Crash! The SUV scraped past them and slammed into a lamppost. The little boy's mother rushed over and helped them up. Oh, thank you so much, thank you for saving my child. Nina dusted herself off and waved her hand dismissively. You're welcome. Just keep a closer eye on him. The street is dangerous. The young, blonde mother thanked her repeatedly, even leaving a business card and telling her to call if she ever needed anything. After saying goodbye, Nina limped across the street. She looked down at her knee. It was a bloody mess. It seemed she needed to find a clinic for a simple disinfection and bandage, but she was in an unfamiliar place. Where could she find one? Just as she was worrying, a voice came from behind her. Are you always this prone to getting hurt? Nina turned around. In the setting sun, Arson Cole stood behind her, backlit by the light. Arson helped her sit down and took out disinfectant, gauze, and painkillers from his bag. Nina was surprised. This guy carried a first aid kit with him. Noticing her surprise, Arson said as he disinfected her wound, "It's not like back home. People get hurt on the streets here all the time. After a while, I just got used to carrying these things with me." Nina looked around. Do you always run into injured people? Arson smiled. Yes, I do. Didn't I just run into one today? Nina pursed her lips. Thank you. Otherwise, I probably would have just had to go home and rinse it with water. Arson's technique was so skilled that Nina didn't feel any pain at all before he finished bandaging her up. Don't get it wet for a few days and avoid spicy food. These are anti-inflammatory pills. Remember to take them on time. Nina took them and thanked him again. Arson sighed. Might as well see this through. Get in the car. I'll drive you home. Before Nina could refuse, Arson scooped her up in his arms and gently placed her in the passenger seat. He leaned over to fasten her seatbelt, but Nina, blushing, quickly grabbed it and did it herself. Thanks, I've got it. Arson raised an eyebrow and nodded. Right, forgot you only hurt your knee. The atmosphere in the small space was awkward. They had known each other for less than 12 hours, and they had already gone from a fellow countryman meeting in a foreign land, moment to a heated argument over her treatment, and now he was bandaging her wounds and driving her home. The drive would take about half an hour, and Nina racked her brain for something to say to break the silence. Dr. Cole, why is your English name Arson? As soon as the question was out, Nina breathed a sigh of relief. Arson turned on the music, and a soothing piano piece eased the tension and awkwardness. There's a musician I really like named Arson. The hospital needed a name, so I just used his. Nina turned in her seat, her face lit with excitement. Arson from Walking on the Desert. Arson was pleasantly surprised. You know him too? I thought he was a pretty niche artist. Nina immediately launched into a passionate explanation of how she had accidentally discovered Arson and gradually fallen in love with his music. He's an artist with a lot of integrity. Anyone who insists on being themselves in their field is cool. Arson nodded in agreement. So what about me? Do you think I'm cool or just stubborn? Nina didn't know how to answer for a moment. As a patient, I think you're cold and stubborn. But as a friend, I'd say you're very cool. Arson smiled faintly. Thank you for such a high compliment. Your hand, how did it really get injured? Nina was caught off guard by the sudden change of topic and didn't know what to say. Arson quickly added, Of course, if you insist on not telling me, I respect that. You're cool that way too. Nina smiled, relieved. Actually, there's nothing to hide. I just think it's a bit embarrassing. Chapter 16, Ethan returned to the villa on the mountain, a place he hadn't been to in a long time. It was the marital home he and Nina had chosen together at first sight. He pushed open the door to find the house dark and silent. Click the moment the lights came on, Ethan froze. The once fully decorated house was now empty and barren. The giant wedding portrait of the two of them was gone from the wall, leaving only a faint outline. Is anyone here? Show yourselves. A few servants emerged, rubbing their eyes sleepily. Sir, what are you doing here? Ethan was furious. This is my house. Why can't I be here? Where's Nina? Has she been back? The servants exchanged glances, none of them daring to speak. Ethan's anger boiled over. Did I hire you to perform a mime show? Speak, the housekeeper stammered. Miss Hayes came back 3 days ago. She stayed for less than half an hour, then left with a suitcase. Did she say where she was going or when she'd be back? The housekeeper shook her head. I asked her if I should prepare dinner, but she said no, that she wouldn't be coming back anymore. Ethan's brow furrowed. What about the things in the house? Who gave you permission to move them? The servants all spoke at once. We didn't move them, it was Miss Hayes. She said she wanted new furniture and gave the old stuff to the junk collector for free. Miss Hayes also said we could take anything we wanted from the walk-in closet, but we didn't dare. And all the photos, she cut them up and threw them in the trash can in the yard. The cacophony of their voices made Ethan's head spin. He raised a hand to silence them. After the servants returned to their rooms, Ethan went out to the yard. Sure enough, he found the giant wedding portrait lying in the trash can, covered in vegetable scraps. Ethan struggled to pull the frame out and clean off the garbage. He crouched in the yard, carefully wiping the photo until the sky began to lighten. He called a few people to hang the portrait back in its original place and then rummaged through the trash can, pulling out several more photos of him and Nina. Clean these photos, frame them, and hang them in a prominent place. He wanted Nina to see everything he had carefully arranged the moment she returned. She would be so happy. As for the various luxury items in the walk-in closet, he generously gave them all to the servants. Out with the old, in with the new. I'm going to buy a whole new collection for Nina to symbolize a fresh start for us. After he had done everything, Ethan clapped his hands in satisfaction. He took out his phone and joyfully dialed Nina's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Ethan comforted himself. Nina has been through a lot lately. She must be angry and refusing to answer my calls. It's okay. When I propose to her in front of everyone at the engagement party tomorrow, she'll be moved. He sent Nina a message. Nina, you have to come to the estate tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I'll be waiting for you. Although he still felt uneasy, he was certain that Nina would never leave him. After all, she had been willing to risk her life to save him. The doctor sent a message saying that the diagnosis of his memory recovery was ready. Everything was in place. He was just waiting for tomorrow, when the entire Lancaster family would be present, for him to recover his memory. Mrs. Lancaster called, urging him to go with Liana to try on their engagement outfits. Leah has been waiting for you at the estate since this morning. Hurry back. In a good mood, Ethan hummed a tune all the way back to the estate. Liana hadn't slept well and sat nervously beside Mrs. Lancaster with dark circles under her eyes. Auntie Beatrice, Ethan, darling, isn't answering my calls. I'm so worried about him. Mrs. Lancaster patted her hand reassuringly. He must be out eating and drinking with his friends. Boys will be boys, you know. You two are about to get engaged. He's just having a last-minute bachelor party." Hearing this, Liana blushed. Chapter 17. When Ethan walked in, humming a tune with his hands in his pockets, Mrs. Lancaster and Liana were going over the guest list for the engagement party, making sure no one was missed. Seeing the radiant Ethan, Liana immediately ran to his side. "Ethan, darling, why didn't you answer my calls?" Ethan frowned. "Did you call me?" He took out his phone and only then remembered that Liana had called him yesterday while he was cleaning the wedding portrait. He had hung up, and when she called again, he had simply blocked her number. "Oh, I was asleep. I didn't hear it." Liana was skeptical and was about to ask where he had slept when Ethan brought up the engagement outfits. Liana immediately became excited and, taking his hand, showed him the few outfits she and Mrs. Lancaster had selected. One of them looked very familiar. He recognized it as the dress Nina had originally chosen for their wedding reception. "Any of them are fine, except for that one." Liana followed his gaze to the one he had pointed at, which happened to be her favorite, a wine red cheongsam and a black tunic suit. "Ethan, darling, isn't red your favorite color? This one really complements my skin. Let me try it on for you." Ethan's face darkened. "Don't try it on." Liana's smile froze, and she looked on the verge of tears. Mrs. Lancaster quickly intervened. "Ethan, don't you dare be harsh with my daughter-in-law." She then pulled Liana to sit down. "This one is a bit too vibrant. Why don't we save it for the wedding? It would be more appropriate then, don't you think?" Tears welled in Liana's eyes, but she managed a small nod. She felt wronged. Before, Nina had stood between them, and she had used every trick in the book to drive her away. Now that Nina was gone, why was her relationship with Ethan even worse than before? Liana couldn't understand it, and could only hope that the engagement would happen soon and lock Ethan down. Liana had Ethan watch as she tried on the remaining outfits, twirling in front of him. "Ethan, darling, is this one pretty? Is the style too old-fashioned? What about this one? The color seems a bit too dark. This skirt isn't flowy enough." Ethan was dismissive the entire time, offering only nice, good, and okay. His eyes, however, were glued to his phone screen, constantly refreshing his chat with Nina. But Nina still hadn't replied to any of his messages, and her phone was still off. Ethan went to look for Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, only to be told that they hadn't come to work at the estate for 2 days. Old Hayes, he's been so diligent for decades, never missed a day of work. This garden really isn't the same without him. Yesterday's hailstorm knocked all the buds off these roses. Ethan stared at the withered yellow roses, a growing sense of unease in his heart. This yellow rose garden in the backyard of the estate had been planted by him and Nina together. Nina had said the language of yellow roses was waiting for love. She had leaned on his shoulder, looking at the budding rose bushes, her eyes full of hope for the future. "When we get married, we'll use the yellow roses we planted together to decorate the wedding venue." Ethan had affectionately tapped her nose. "Okay, whatever you want. I'll do whatever you say." And now, the entire garden of yellow roses had withered before they had a chance to bloom. He called the butler. "Go hire some gardeners immediately. I want this entire area planted with yellow roses by tomorrow, and they have to be in full bloom." He wanted to restore everything to its original state so that he and Nina could reconcile. Liana stood in the distance, watching him, her eyes filled with jealousy. She stopped the butler. "After you pull out those yellow roses, plant this entire area with lavender." The butler looked troubled. "But the young master said." Liana slapped the old butler across the face. "I'm about to become the young mistress of the Lancaster family. Are you going to do as I say or not?" The butler nodded repeatedly. That night, Ethan used the excuse of meeting friends to ditch Liana again. Chapter 18, when Nina finished telling the story of the accident, her eyes were red again. She scoffed. He actually asked if Liana could have the surgery first because she was timid and vain. And me. I was strong. She laughed, but a tear fell onto the back of her hand. She quickly wiped it away. "Sorry, I'm making a fool of myself." Arson slammed on the brakes, pulling the car over to the side of the road. His face was terrifyingly grim. Nina thought that after hearing the reason, he would once again believe she didn't cherish her hand and be angry. She silently opened the car door to get out. "Sorry for wasting your time. I won't bother you again." But Arson suddenly grabbed her wrist, his voice tight. "That bastard, hasn't he gotten what he deserves?" Nina was stunned. He He's probably getting engaged soon. Arson slammed his fist on the steering wheel. There's an old Chinese saying, good is rewarded with good and evil with evil. If it seems there is no retribution, it's only because the time has not yet come. He looked at her with determination in his eyes. I will use everything I have learned in my life to heal your hand. Nina was overjoyed and ecstatic. Really? Do I still have a chance to become a pianist? Arson nodded solemnly. I'll make it even more flexible than before, but, Arson's tone shifted, I have one condition. Nina asked nervously, what condition? She secretly wondered if it was something like promising herself to him. Arson spoke with a straight face. When I heal your hand, you must use it to slap that bastard hard, twice no, 3 times, Nina burst out laughing. Then you have to be there to witness it, Arson laughed along with her. I'll take a picture of that exhilarating moment, frame it, and hang it on my office wall. As the sun set, the two of them laughed together in the car. Nina asked him when she could schedule the pre-op exams, saying she wanted to do it as soon as possible. To her surprise, Arson was even more eager than she was and immediately turned the car around and headed back to the hospital. The nurse was bewildered. Dr. Arson's mood was truly unpredictable. While waiting for the exams, she asked Nina, what did you do to convince the difficult Dr. Arson? He's usually so cold-blooded. Nina looked at Arson's busy figure. I don't think he's really cold-blooded. On the contrary, he's very warm-hearted. She sat on a bench in the hallway, waiting for the test results, her heart pounding. Although Arson had promised to do his best to heal her hand, it all depended on whether her various indicators met the conditions for surgery. Arson, in his white coat, sat down next to her and handed her a tissue. Are you nervous? Nina wiped the sweat from her forehead, her voice trembling. A little. I'm so afraid that the hope that was just ignited will be extinguished again. I've had such bad luck lately, I don't know if... Arson suddenly covered her mouth and made a SHH gesture. Don't jinx it, we Chinese are very particular about. Misfortune comes from the mouth. Nina didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Seeing how serious he was, she quickly made a SHH gesture as well. In fact, Arson was also a little nervous. After all, he had already made a big promise. If he couldn't heal Nina's hand, it would be a small matter of losing face, but a huge matter of breaking his promise. His mother had taught him since he was a child to be a man of his word and to be honest and trustworthy. This was not only his principle as a doctor, but also his principle as a person. Moreover, he had already given Nina hope. He couldn't imagine how she would bear it if the results were not what they hoped for. The results are out. Nina rushed over to get the report and immediately flipped to the last page. Arson pretended to be nonchalant and asked, "How are the results?" When Nina looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. Arson's heart sank. He walked over and patted her on the shoulder. "Why don't you try playing the cello? Or the violin? Or even the suona?" But Nina suddenly hugged him. "I can do it, all the indicators are fine, my hand can be saved." Her breath tickled his ear, and the faint scent of roses from her body wafted into his nose. Arson felt a tingle run through him, and his face unknowingly turned red all the way to his neck. He stammered, that's good." Nina realized their embrace had been a bit too intimate and quickly pushed him away. "I'm sorry, Dr. Cole, I was just too excited." Arson blinked repeatedly, looking around nervously. "Well, it's getting late. You should go to my place." No, I mean, I'll take you home." A nearby nurse looked at the suddenly flustered Arson with suspicion. "Dr. Arson, do you have a fever? Your face is as red as a monkey's bottom." Nina turned her head and covered her mouth to keep from laughing out loud. Arson could only scratch his head in embarrassment. Chapter 19. On the day of the engagement party, Liana was unusually excited. She put on her gown early in the morning and went to the Lancaster estate. Mrs. Lancaster was busy directing the servants to prepare snacks and ordering people to greet guests at the main gate. Seeing Liana, she enthusiastically welcomed her. "You look so beautiful. Leah, our Lancaster daughter-in-law, is simply gorgeous." Liana was even more thrilled, helping Mrs. Lancaster manage everything, acting every bit the part of the young mistress of the Lancaster family. As the auspicious hour approached, there was still no sign of Ethan. Mrs. Lancaster called him several times, but no one answered. Liana also kept sending him messages, but he didn't reply to a single one. "Auntie Beatrice, Ethan, darling, He wouldn't have changed his mind, would he? My parents just asked me about him. Although Mrs. Lancaster was also a little panicked, she forced herself to remain calm. How could he? He's probably just changing his clothes. I'll have a servant go hurry him along. Go tell your parents that there will be absolutely no problems. Liana was half convinced, her heart growing more and more uneasy. Mrs. Lancaster cursed Ethan under her breath. That brat better not pull any tricks. This whole house is waiting for him. Suddenly, the servant who had been sent to find Ethan ran in hastily. Madam, it's terrible. Mrs. Lancaster's face paled. What's the panic? Speak slowly. The guests also stopped their conversations and looked over. Madam, the young master. He's fainted. The wine glass in Mrs. Lancaster's hand clattered to the floor. Where is he? How did he faint? Make way, make way. A few of Ethan's friends carried him in and placed him on the sofa. Ethan just accidentally fell down the stairs, hit his head, and passed out. Liana, in her 10-centimeter heels, clip-clopped over and threw herself onto Ethan. Ethan, darling, wake up, Mrs. Lancaster swayed, and someone behind her had to catch her to keep her from falling. A guest who knew some medicine suggested pressing on his philtrum. Cough, cough. Ethan slowly opened his eyes and looked around. He sat up and rubbed the back of his head. Where am I? What's happening? Everyone exchanged glances, and the room fell into a strange silence. Liana grabbed his hand. Ethan, darling, this is our engagement party, don't scare me. Ethan looked her up and down. Who are you? Liana's expression froze, and her voice trembled uncontrollably. I'm Leah, your fiancé, Liana Sterling, but Ethan shook her off. I don't know you. My fiancé is Nina Hayes. Where's Nina? Where is she? Mrs. Lancaster's head was buzzing. She grabbed a glass of water from a nearby table and threw it in his face. Ethan, what nonsense are you spouting? Today is a happy day for the Lancaster and Sterling families. Your fiancé is Leah, not some Nina. Ethan shook the water from his face. The person I love is Nina, and she's the one I'm going to marry. Liana staggered back a few steps and pointed at him. You've recovered your memory? Ethan nodded. Yes, I fell just now, and my memory came back. Liana's eyes instantly turned red. Are you saying you've forgotten confessing your love to me and asking me to be your girlfriend? Ethan nodded. Everything I did while I had amnesia doesn't count. Ignoring the protests of Liana and Mrs. Lancaster, he called out Nina's name. Nina, where are you? Did you see? I've recovered my memory. Nina, come out, I'm going to propose to you. The guests began to whisper, pointing at Ethan and Liana. I heard Ethan Lancaster lost his memory in a car accident, kicked out his previous fiancée, and was determined to marry the Sterling family's daughter. I heard about that too. There was a whole scene at an auction. And now he says he's recovered his memory. It's like a movie. Who knows if it's real or not? These young people and their games? Liana's face was ashen. She tried to grab Ethan but missed her footing and fell to the ground. Ethan, you can't do this to me. Chapter 20. The once joyful engagement party ended in chaos due to Ethan's sudden memory recovery. Liana's parents berated the Lancaster family for going back on their word and dragged a hysterical Liana away from the estate. Unable to bear the shock, Mrs. Lancaster suffered a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, Ethan was constantly calling Nina. The number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later. Outside the emergency room, he paced anxiously. A terrible thought gnawed at him. Nina was gone. This wasn't a short trip or a fit of pique. She had left him for good. He had his assistant look up Nina's phone number, only to find out. Nina had canceled her number 3 days ago, along with all her social media accounts. Ethan stumbled back a few steps and sank onto a chair. He blamed himself. Why hadn't he noticed she was leaving sooner? Maybe he could have stopped her. But 3 days had already passed. She might have already left Port City or even the country. Mrs. Lancaster was still in the emergency room, and as the only son, he couldn't just abandon her. But what about Nina? After more than a decade together, she had become a part of his very being. He couldn't imagine a future without her. Ethan slapped himself hard. Why did he have to pretend to have amnesia? Why did he have to seek thrills? The emergency room doors opened. Family of the patient? Is the family here? Ethan ran over. Doctor, how is my mother? The doctor removed his mask. The patient is out of danger for now, but she needs to rest for a while. She absolutely cannot be agitated again. After thanking the doctor, Ethan wheeled Mrs. Lancaster back to her room. When Mrs. Lancaster woke up, she clutched Ethan's hand, her words earnest. "Ethan, the Lancaster business is your father's life's work. You can't let it be destroyed in your hands." Ethan lowered his head. "But Nina, she didn't do anything wrong. She's the one I love. How can I marry someone else?" Mrs. Lancaster tremblingly took out her phone. "Look, that gardener's daughter only loves your money. I gave her 20 million, and she took her parents and left the country." Ethan snatched the phone. "Nina's not like that." Mrs. Lancaster began to cough violently, and Ethan quickly helped her sit up. "No matter what kind of person she is, she's given up on you. She's not coming back." Ethan's face was filled with regret. "No, I'll wait for her, even if I have to wait a lifetime." Mrs. Lancaster gasped for breath, her face turning purple. Ethan patted her back to help her breathe. Mrs. Lancaster grabbed his hand again, her tone almost pleading. "Go apologize to the Sterling family. Apologize to Leah. Go on now." After leaving the room, Ethan called Liana. The phone rang only once before it was picked up. "Ethan, darling." Ethan glanced at his sleeping mother. "The engagement can continue, but I'll decide when we get married." Liana wept with joy. "Whatever you say, Ethan, darling, as long as you let me stay by your side, I'll do anything." After hanging up, he called his assistant. "Check Nina's immigration records. I need to know where she went." Agreeing to continue the engagement with the Sterlings was just a stalling tactic. Once he had made the Lancaster family strong again, he could break off the engagement. He had to find Nina. She was the woman he was meant to spend his life with. Chapter 21, 3 years later. Ethan stood with his hands in his pockets before the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 38th floor of the Lancaster Corporation, looking down at Port City below. His assistant stood respectfully behind him. "Mr. Lancaster, as per your instructions, we have terminated our partnership with the Sterling Corporation." Ethan nodded. What was the reaction from the Sterlings? Mr. and Mrs. Sterling were quite calm, but Miss Sterling, "She's currently downstairs making a scene, demanding to see you." Ethan waved his hand. "I know. You can go." After the assistant left, Ethan lit a cigarette. 3 years. He had used every means possible to find Nina, but she had vanished without a trace. It was as if she had evaporated from the face of the earth, completely disappearing from Ethan's world. He hadn't given up looking for her, nor had he given up on reviving the Lancaster Corporation. Now that he no longer needed the Sterling's support, he naturally wouldn't continue the partnership. Before his cigarette was finished, the door to the CEO's office was thrown open. Liana burst in, her hair a mess. "Ethan, darling, Dad said you terminated the partnership with the Sterling family. Is it true?" Ethan took a deep drag and blew out a perfect smoke ring. "Your dad didn't lie to you. It's true." Liana's voice trembled. "What about our engagement? Is that being terminated too?" Ethan stubbed out his cigarette. "What do you think?" She wasn't oblivious to Ethan's growing distance, but she couldn't bear the thought of letting her prize slip away. 3 years ago, they were so close to getting married she was just one step away from becoming Mrs. Lancaster. But at the most crucial moment, the engagement party, Ethan had taken a fall and miraculously recovered his memory. He had declared that Nina was the one he truly loved, his real fiancée, causing immense humiliation for Liana and her family. Afterward, Liana had seen the doctor's report, which did state memory recall due to external stimulus. She had cried and thrown tantrums, and her father, at his wits' end, had threatened to pull his investment from the Lancaster Corporation to pressure Mrs. Lancaster. In the end, Mrs. Lancaster's guilt trip had successfully made Ethan relent. In that phone call from the hospital, he had said, "The engagement can continue, but I'll decide when we get married." Liana had agreed without hesitation. She was young, beautiful, and from a prominent family. As long as she stayed by Ethan's side, he would eventually fall in love with her. So she had swallowed her pride and personally took care of Ethan's daily life. She had to endure his volatile moods and constantly fight off the other women who flocked around him. 3 years, even a stone should have warmed up by now, but Ethan remained unmoved. Every time Liana brought up marriage, Ethan would come up with a slew of excuses. This had dragged on for 3 years. And now he had even terminated the partnership with her family. Marriage was a distant dream. She completely broke down, rushing to the Lancaster Corporation building and crying like a shrew. Times had changed. The Sterling Corporation was on the decline, while the Lancaster Corporation was thriving. If 3 years ago, the Sterlings thought Ethan wouldn't dare to break off the engagement, now it was the Sterlings who were clinging to him. Even if their daughter was suffering, they had to hold on tight to the Lancaster family's support. Liana's eyes were red. "You're still thinking about that gardener's daughter, aren't you? Every day, every moment you're with me, you're thinking about her, right?" Ethan didn't confirm or deny it, but his actions proved he had never given up on finding Nina. Liana shook her head in denial. "I don't believe it, I don't believe it. You had forgotten her, you said you loved me." Ethan looked at her as if she were mentally handicapped and said slowly, "You really are an idiot. I never lost my memory. I never forgot Nina." Liana's pupils shrank. "Then what am I?" Ethan chuckled, his voice cold and thin. "You were just a plaything I got too invested in. You don't even count as a supporting character." Chapter 22, like a madwoman, Liana rushed over, grabbed the photo of Nina from Ethan's desk, held it high, and slammed it down. "Ethan, do you really think Nina will ever forgive you? Don't forget, you're the one who ruined her hand." Slap. Ethan raised his hand and slapped her across the face. A bright red handprint quickly appeared on her pale cheek. The security guards, assistant and secretary who had followed her and all stopped in their tracks, stunned. Outside the office, hundreds of Lancaster Corporation employees craned their necks to see what was happening. Countless gazes, filled with either curiosity or mockery, fell on Liana, making her feel as if she were being pricked by needles. And she calls herself a lady. She's acting like a harpy. Pathetic people always have a detestable side. She used tricks to drive away the CEO's childhood sweetheart, and now she's getting what she deserves. The CEO was held hostage by the Sterling family for 3 years. It's about time he got his own back so satisfying. An intense sense of humiliation made Liana tremble all over. She shrieked hysterically, "Ethan, how could you hit me, how could you?" Ethan took a few steps back and, with a look of disgust, took out a handkerchief to wipe the spittle that had landed on his collar. "You can choose to leave. I have no objection." A single sentence silenced Liana's torrent of words. Yes, she was the one who had insisted on having him. This was her own doing. The assistant walked around Liana. "Mr. Lancaster, there's a reception at the Regal Hotel in half an hour. The invitation was delivered last week." Ethan casually tossed the handkerchief into the trash, without giving Liana a second glance. On the way, Liana's words echoed in Ethan's ears. "Do you really think Nina will ever forgive you? Don't forget, you're the one who ruined her hand." His already furrowed brow tightened. This was the biggest regret of his life, the deepest pain in his heart. For 3 years, during countless sleepless nights or waking from nightmares, he would pound his chest in agony. The too invested, he had told Liana, was his definition of those days when he felt as if he had been possessed. He pulled his thoughts back to the present and asked his assistant in the front seat. Still no news of Nina. The assistant shook his head. "Miss Hayes canceled her residency permit before she left. We can't find any information on her at the immigration office either." Ethan took out the piece bracelet he always kept in the car, stroking the barely visible, yet still noticeable, crack in it. "Keep looking." In the lobby of the Regal Hotel, the assistant handed the invitation to the security guard. "Mr. Lancaster, this way, please." In the bustling lobby, the Mr. Lancaster didn't attract much attention. But by chance, the words fell on the ears of a woman pulling a suitcase. She paused, subconsciously turning towards the source of the voice. The tall, slender back of a man was mostly obscured by a pillar, but there was an indescribable sense of familiarity about him. Ding! The elevator doors opened. "Miss, are you taking the elevator?" Nina snapped back to reality and looked away. "Sorry." She didn't linger, pushing her suitcase straight into the elevator. On the other side, Ethan seemed to feel something and turned to look towards the elevator. As the doors slowly closed, he caught a fleeting glimpse of a bowed head in profile. His pupils trembled and he froze on the spot. The assistant gently prompted him, "Mr. Lancaster, the reception is about to start." Ethan suddenly pushed him aside and sprinted towards the elevator. The elevator was already ascending. He repeatedly pressed the button, even trying to pry the doors open with his bare hands. An attendant politely stopped him. "Sir, please take the next one." Frustration and regret flooded his mind. He slammed his fist against the wall. The assistant who had followed him was confused. "Mr. Lancaster, what happened?" Chapter 23, Ethan took a deep breath and rushed to the front desk. "The young lady who was just here, long hair, very fair skin, very beautiful. Which room is she in?" The receptionist bowed slightly. "I'm sorry, sir, but guest information is strictly confidential. I cannot disclose it to you." Ethan's fingers tapped unconsciously on the marble countertop. "I know your hotel's policy, but I must know where she is staying, right now." The sudden rise in his voice attracted the attention of passers-by. The receptionist maintained a professional smile. "I'm very sorry, but we really cannot provide you with that young lady's information." Frustrated, Ethan tore off his tie and tried to rush behind the counter to look at the computer himself. His assistant quickly stopped him. "Mr. Lancaster, what on earth is going on?" Ethan paced back and forth. "It's Nina. I saw Nina, just a minute ago, in the elevator." The assistant pursed his lips. "Could it be that you miss Miss Hayes so much that you mistook someone else with a similar back for her?" Ethan shook his head. "I'm sure it was Nina. We grew up together. How could I be mistaken?" He was about to argue with the staff again, but was stopped by his assistant. "Mr. Lancaster, let's think of another way. The reception is about to start. We have to go in." Ethan pursed his lips. "I'll go to the reception first. You stay here and keep watch. You must get the guest list and check in information. And if she comes downstairs, you must keep her here and call me immediately." "Got it." The assistant nodded repeatedly, and only then did Ethan reluctantly head to the reception. This reception, hosted by the Dewan Group, brought together many of a certain country's top business leaders and young talents, making it an excellent opportunity to expand business and network. Over the past few years, in order to strengthen and expand the Lancaster Corporation, he had attended countless receptions, many of which ended with him drinking until his stomach bled. Every time he worked late into the night or early morning, he would have his driver take him back to the mountain villa. Before opening the door, he would imagine Nina waiting for him inside. She would be just like before, wearing an apron and busy in the kitchen, then bringing out a bowl of hot, steaming late-night porridge. "You've been drinking again, haven't you? I made you some congee with preserved egg and pork. Drink it while it's hot to warm your stomach." But every time he opened the door full of hope, calling out Nina to the dark, empty living room, the only response was the wind on the mountain and the ticking of the grandfather clock on the wall. For 3 years, he had someone clean the villa spotless every day, always waiting for its mistress to return from her long journey. A few times, Liana had secretly followed him there after he had been drinking, and he had been furious when he found out. "If I ever find you here again, don't blame me for being ruthless." Liana was hurt, but she didn't dare to cross his boundaries again. At the reception, drinks were flowing freely, and after a few rounds, Ethan began to feel dizzy. He checked his phone almost every minute, afraid of missing a call from his assistant. A few corporate presidents came over to chat, and Ethan perfunctorily exchanged contact information with them, just in case he needed it in the future. After a few more drinks, Ethan couldn't handle it anymore and found a corner to catch his breath. As he sat down, he looked around. Since entering the venue, he had felt a pair of eyes on him. Several times, he had almost met the person's gaze, but when he looked again, the eyes were gone. Ethan closed his eyes and rubbed his throbbing temples. Was it just his imagination? Ethan Lancaster. "Mr. Lancaster." Chapter 24, Ethan turned towards the voice. A strange man was smiling and raising a glass to him. Ethan racked his brain, trying to find any information about him, but came up with nothing. He forced himself to pull it together and raised his glass in return. "Excuse me, do we know each other?" The man pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses, his smile polite yet distant. "Arson Cole, I've heard a lot about Mr. Lancaster. I came here especially to meet you today." Arson Cole. The Cole family, who held the economic pulse of half of Shanghai. He had heard that the Cole family had been planning to enter the port city market for 3 years, but he had always thought it was just a rumor and hadn't paid it much mind. But today, Arson Cole was actually at this reception, which meant the rumors were likely true. The Cole family's business interests were vast, covering finance, real estate, hotels, healthcare, luxury goods, environmental protection, culture, and education. In recent years, they had also entered the new energy and technology sectors. It was said that their move into Port City was focused on film, entertainment, and international transport, which was a departure from the Cole family's usual industries. And it was precisely these two industries that had allowed Ethan to rise so quickly in just 3 years. Ethan stood up and walked over to Arson, speaking in the tone of a host. "Welcome to Port City, Mr. Cole." Arson smiled faintly. "You're too kind, Mr. Lancaster. I'm afraid we'll be dealing with each other a lot in the future. I hope you'll give me some guidance." Ethan stretched his lips into a smile, trying to peer through the glasses to discern his true intentions. But even a seasoned expert like him couldn't see through the man's true purpose and intentions. Arson raised his glass. Clink. The two glasses met with a crisp sound. After the reception, Ethan hurried out of the venue. Arson watched his back disappear before turning to his secretary. "Keep an eye on Ethan Lancaster. I want real-time updates on his movements." The secretary nodded respectfully. "And Miss Hayes? Should we help her change hotels?" Arson frowned. "Did they run into each other?" "Not exactly, but it seems this Ethan Lancaster recognized Miss Hayes." Arson thought for a moment. "No need. She doesn't like to be controlled. Just keep a close eye on him. If they meet, tell me immediately." Before the secretary left, Arson added, "For now, don't let Miss Hayes know I'm in Port City. Let her focus on preparing for her performance." This was Nina's first solo piano concert in the country, and he wouldn't allow anyone to disturb her, including himself. 3 years ago, Arson had performed an 8-hour surgery that successfully reconnected the severed tendons and bones in Nina's right hand. After a 6-month recovery period, Nina's hands finally touched the beloved black and white keys again. That day, she had specially invited Arson and her parents to witness her rebirth. When the last note of love's romance faded, Nina was already in tears. Her parents wept beside her, and Arson's eyes also turned red. Nina walked up to Arson and hugged him again. "Thank you. You are the god of luck sent by God to give me the light of life." Nina's talent was exceptional, and with diligent practice, she had risen to the top ranks of the world's concert pianists in just over 2 years. Last year, she had won the title of the most influential and promising young pianist. Last month, she had been invited by the country's most famous orchestra to hold a solo concert. Nina was hesitant at first. After all, when she left 3 years ago, she had sworn she would never come back. But her parents had persuaded her, "You get up where you fall. Mom and Dad will go back with you." Arson had also supported her. "I still have some influential friends in the country. I've already spoken to them. You can call me anytime if you need anything." After seeing Nina off at the airport, Arson thought for 3 minutes and then decisively bought a ticket for the next flight, following her back to the country. It just so happened that the Cole family's plan to enter the Port City market was basically mature, and it was time to take the first step. Chapter 25, Leaving the reception, Ethan immediately found his assistant, who had been waiting in the lobby. "Well, did you see Nina?" The assistant shook his head. "But I did find this." He handed him a poster. Ethan took it with a puzzled look. "World-renowned young concert pianist Rose, first solo concert in the country." The poster showed the silhouette of a long-haired woman in shadow who bore a 90 resemblance to Nina. Ethan's pupils shrank. "This silhouette is Nina, it's her. Where did this poster come from?" The assistant pointed to a poster at the hotel entrance. "I heard from the hotel cleaning staff that this pianist named Rose is staying at this hotel." Ethan was impatient. "Which room specifically?" But the assistant shook his head. "The cleaner doesn't know, and the hotel staff are tight-lipped." Although he was almost certain that the silhouette on the poster was the Nina he had been thinking about day and night. A moment of calm brought a major flaw to mind. Playing the piano required extremely flexible hands, but Nina's hand had been so badly injured. After her surgery, the doctor had declared that she would never be able to play the piano again. Could Rose be Nina? Ethan wished he could go knocking on every door right now, eager to confirm if Rose was Nina. His assistant quickly stopped him. "Mr. Lancaster, we can confirm it at the concert. We don't have to find Miss Hayes right now." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Get 2 front-row VIP tickets for the concert." Ethan had his assistant drive him back to the mountain villa. As usual, he pushed open the door and saw a figure in an apron, busy in the kitchen. Ethan thought he was hallucinating from the alcohol and shook his head. When he opened his eyes again, not only had the figure not disappeared, but she was walking towards him. "You've been drinking, haven't you? Come have a bowl of hot porridge." A bowl of steaming porridge was pushed in front of him. Ethan practically leaped up and hugged her. "Nina, you're back. I knew you couldn't bear to leave me." The person in his arms stiffened. "You still can't let her go?" Liana, Ethan's drunkenness instantly evaporated. He pushed Liana away. "What are you doing here?" Tears welled in Liana's eyes. "I knew you would be drinking tonight, so I bought some ingredients." She held up the hot porridge like a treasure. "I simmered it for 2 hours. Try some?" Ethan pushed her hand away, and the bowl crashed to the floor. The hot porridge splashed onto Liana's neck and chest, instantly turning a large area red. "Ah," Liana screamed in pain, but she received no sympathy or concern from Ethan. "Liana, while I still have some patience left, take your damn porridge and get out." Liana's eyes were filled with despair. "Ethan, you'll get what you deserve." Looking at the once happy marital home in disarray, Ethan finally fell to his knees and wept. He had to admit Liana was right. He wasn't going to get what he deserved, he was already getting it. Ding. A message came from his assistant. "Mr. Lancaster, tomorrow night at 7 at the Port City Symphony Hall. I'll pick you up then." After hanging up, Ethan knelt on the floor, wiping the stains from the floor with a cloth. As he wiped, he muttered to himself, "Nina loves things to be clean. I have to make it spotless so she'll be happy when she comes back." Hiding outside the door, Liana's eyes flashed with madness. Port City Symphony Hall? Could Nina be back? HMPH, if I can't be happy, no one can. Chapter 26. Seeing Ethan again was calmer than Nina had imagined. In the second before the elevator doors slowly closed, she caught a glimpse of Ethan running towards her. He seemed thinner after 3 years, but the aura of a powerful man around him was even stronger. Just before their eyes met, Nina's phone chimed. "Are you at the hotel? Call me anytime if you have trouble. You're welcome to bother me." Nina stared at the message from Arson, thinking. He seemed unusually concerned about her every move in Port City. Arson was the first friend she had made abroad. More than healing her hand, he had healed her heart. He would be there to dispel her confusion when she stood at a crossroads in life, and he would firmly tell her, "You're amazing, uniquely amazing," when she fell into self-doubt. Arson was both a mentor and a friend. A year ago, they were sitting by the Seine, drinking coffee as usual. "Congratulations on joining the National Symphony Orchestra. I told you, you're more brilliant than you can imagine." Nina smiled faintly, her waist-length hair blowing in the wind. A crescent moon quietly rose over the river. Arson took a sip of his coffee. "Nina, do you know the phrase, 'the moon is beautiful tonight'?" Nina raised an eyebrow and bumped his shoulder. "No way, Dr. Arson. Are you preparing to confess to that pretty nurse?" That night, Nina sat at the piano, engrossed in playing Richard Clayderman. Arson's call came in. Nina put it on speaker and finished the piece. "Nina, go to the window and look." Nina stood up and went to the balcony. "Don't tell me your confession failed." But Arson didn't answer her. "The moon is beautiful tonight." Nina gripped the balcony railing tightly and hastily hung up the phone. After that unfinished confession, they didn't see each other for a whole month. No calls, no messages. Until Nina's first performance with the orchestra. Arson attended in his best suit, sitting in the front row and giving her a go-for-it sign. One on stage, one in the audience, they exchanged a smile. After the performance, Nina accepted the bouquet of flowers Arson had prepared. "Thank you, I thought you wouldn't come." Arson put his hands in his pockets, his expression relaxed and natural. "How could I not? We're the best of bros, aren't we?" They tacitly avoided mentioning the moon that night, returning to a state of friendship first, romance later. Until this time, when Nina returned to the country for her performance, Arson seemed particularly uneasy. Although he knew the harm Ethan had done to Nina and that she would never go back, he was still afraid. So, he had secretly followed Nina to Port City and checked into the same hotel. At the reception, he had recognized Ethan at a glance. He was more handsome than he had imagined. He had spent the whole night observing Ethan, further confirming that he was a difficult and formidable opponent. He was an excellent surgeon and a decisive businessman. In his dictionary, there were no incurable wounds and no unbeatable opponents. Only by completely eliminating the nightmare of Ethan could Nina truly start a new life. Arson stood by the hotel's floor-to-ceiling window, the bustling night view of Port City below him. His secretary told him over the phone that Ethan had booked a front-row VIP ticket for tomorrow's concert. He casually swirled the wine in his glass. Since the enemy had already launched an attack, it would be rude for him to remain hidden any longer. He tilted his head back and drank the wine in his glass. Quickly adjust the plan. I want to seize all of Lancaster's resources and projects within a month, by any means necessary. Chapter 27, before the performance, as Nina was getting her makeup done backstage, her young assistant chattered incessantly in her ear. Miss Rose, you have so much clout, all the big shots from Port City's political, business, and entertainment circles are here. Do you know the Lancaster Corporation? The CEO of Lancaster is the diamond bachelor that countless heiresses and socialites in Port City are after. I saw him in the audience just now, and also, when the assistant mentioned Ethan Lancaster, Nina's eyelashes trembled slightly. The assistant's face was full of gossip. Don't tell me you know this Mr. Lancaster, Miss Rose. Nina smiled faintly. I don't know him. After the host's introduction, Nina, in a pure white dress, walked gracefully onto the stage. She bowed to the audience, her gaze sweeping over Ethan in the front and center seat without lingering. But from the moment Nina stepped onto the stage, Ethan's eyes never left her. Good evening, everyone. I am Rose. It is my great honor to hold my solo concert in Port City. I hope to spend a romantic evening with you all. A rendition of Elgar's Salut d'Amour poured out. Ethan stared at Nina's hands on the black and white keys. At this moment, he was certain that Rose was Nina, but he was still puzzled as to how her hands could be even more flexible than before her injury. Arson sat next to Ethan. Before the concert, they had even had a brief, friendly chat. Mr. Lancaster also enjoys listening to piano music. Ethan made no secret of it. It's not the piano music I like, but the pianist. And you, Mr. Cole? Arson smiled, but his eyes were filled with mockery and disdain. The same as Mr. Lancaster. Ethan was stunned, and before he could process it, Nina was already on stage. The 2-hour performance ended, and in the echo of the last note, the entire audience rose to their feet in applause. After bowing her thanks, Nina prepared to leave the stage. But Ethan suddenly stood up and walked to the front of the stage. Rose, the host quickly tried to smooth things over. This gentleman must be a fan of our Miss Rose. We don't have a fan interaction session scheduled for today. Please return to your seat. But Ethan ignored him and jumped onto the stage. He grabbed Nina's hand. Nina, you are my Nina. How long are you going to keep up this act? Nina looked up. Mr. Lancaster, it's been a long time. Her calm and distant tones stunned Ethan. You're willing to acknowledge me? Nina chuckled. Of course, we're old friends, why wouldn't I? Ethan's eyes gradually turned red. Do you know I've been looking for you for 3 years? Why did you leave without saying goodbye? Why did you disappear without a trace? Nina pulled her hand away. Mr. Lancaster, you're holding on too tight. Don't you know how important a pianist's hands are? This was the best answer Nina could give to his 2 questions. Ethan's voice trembled uncontrollably. I'm sorry, Nina, I was wrong about that, but you know I had amnesia back then, so Nina suddenly laughed. Ethan, you're still lying. Amnesia. Don't think you fooled anyone. Ethan's face changed. I admit I faked the amnesia, but I was just tired of the unchanging life with your childhood sweetheart and wanted to use amnesia as an excuse to openly cheat, right? Everyone turned towards the voice. Arson was adjusting his cufflinks, his tone casual yet powerful. Ethan squinted, finally realizing the voice was Arson's. What right do you have to say that? Who are you to Nina? Arson slowly stood up and walked to the front of the stage. I am her attending physician. I healed her hand, and you are the culprit who almost made her unable to play the piano ever again. As soon as he said this, the whole hall erupted in an uproar. A master like Miss Rose almost lost her chance to be in the piano world. I remember now this Ethan Lancaster is the one from the Lancaster family who drove away his fiancée after his amnesia from the car accident, so Rose is his ex-girlfriend. I heard about that too. He supposedly caused Miss Rose's right hand to be severed to save his new lover. Chapter 28, You're Talking Nonsense. Ethan was furious, trying to stop the gossip in the audience, but he didn't know where to start. He whipped his head around. Nina, who is he? What is your relationship? Arson was now on stage, standing shoulder to shoulder with Nina. Nina spoke softly. What does our relationship have to do with you, Mr. Lancaster? Ethan was stunned, his eyes filled with anger and jealousy. Nina, you can't do this to me. I'm your boyfriend. We were so close to getting married 3 years ago, Nina snorted. You said it yourself. So close. I think you know better than I do what was missing. Ethan was speechless. After a moment, he said, I was bewitched by Liana. That's why I did so many things to hurt you. You have to believe me, you're the one I love the most. Before his words had even faded, a figure rushed onto the stage and lunged at Nina. Arson, with quick reflexes, pulled Nina into his arms. The person missed and fell heavily onto the stage. Liana! Nina recognized the crazed woman as Liana. It was because of her that her hand had been injured. Ethan rushed forward and grabbed Liana by the neck. How dare you show your face in front of me again? How dare you come here to hurt Nina? Liana screamed. Ethan, you made me a laughingstock in all of Port City. If I can't be happy, no one can. Ethan looked up at Nina. Nina, she's the one who hurt your hand. I'll get revenge for you right now. He then dragged Liana to the piano and forced her hands onto the keys. The next second, he slammed the lid shut. A blood-curdling scream erupted from Liana's mouth, like a shriek from hell. The audience gasped in unison. This was attempted murder. Someone secretly called the police. There's an assault happening here. Ethan looked at Liana's reaction with satisfaction. Nina, her hands are ruined. Will you come back to me now? He then took out the repaired piece bracelet from his pocket and presented it to her with both hands, as if it were a treasure. And the piece bracelet she shattered, I found the best craftsman in the world to repair it. Look, it's just like before. Nina frowned. Ethan, do you really think the reason we ended up like this is because of Liana? The smile on Ethan's face froze. Nina took the bracelet and immediately saw the crack. Ethan, stop deceiving yourself. The bracelet can never be truly repaired, and neither can we. We can never go back. Ethan shook his head in disbelief and reached out to grab Nina, but Arson pushed him away. Ethan, if you're a man, stop pestering her. Otherwise, don't blame me for not being polite. Ethan gritted his teeth, his heart aching. His gaze went past Arson to Nina again. The revulsion and coldness in her eyes were like a thorn piercing his flesh. He pleaded with her, Nina, you loved me so much. Why can't you give me another chance? Love, Nina sneered. If loving someone only brings pain, then I would rather have never loved you at all. Ethan's pupils trembled, and he slowly sank to his knees. Nina, for the past 3 years, I've thought about you every single moment. I can't imagine how I'll live the rest of my life without you. Nina looked up and said, word by word, and what does that have to do with me? Ethan's face was filled with shock. He had never imagined that Nina would despise him so much, to the point of wishing him dead. Before leaving, Arson threw a business card at him. Mr. Lancaster, protect your Lancaster Corporation. Don't let it become as fragile as you are. Chapter 29, Arson booked the largest restaurant in Port City to celebrate the success of Nina's first concert. Clink the wine glasses met, and at the same time, the two of them burst into hearty laughter. Nina feigned anger. Dr. Arson, how could you sneak off to Port City without a word? That's not very nice of you. Arson quickly stood up and poured her a glass of wine in apology. It's the debut solo concert of the great master Rose in this country. Of course, I had to be here to support you. They hadn't seen each other for a few days, so they had endless topics to talk about. His secretary called, and Arson got up to take the call. When he returned, Nina had already finished the wine in her glass. Arson called the waiter. Please bring this lady a bowl of hangover soup. Ethan was taken away by the police. He'll probably be locked up for a couple of days. Liana's 10 fingers are all broken. She probably won't be able to lift anything heavy for the rest of her life. Nina took a bite of her dessert. I actually admire her in a way. She really went to great lengths for Ethan. Her parents came to our hospital and specifically requested that I perform surgery on their daughter. How ridiculous. Nina tilted her head with a mischievous smile. So, did Dr. Arson agree? Arson took a bite of his steak. Unfortunately, I had just resigned before returning to the country. I'm no longer a doctor. My current identity is a businessman. So, you're going up against Ethan? Nina had already gathered some of his plans from his fragmented conversations with his secretary. He seemed determined to take over the Lancaster Corporation. She had also just learned that Arson was not just an ordinary doctor, but the eldest son of the Cole family, which controlled half of the country's economy. Arson didn't deny it. It's not just because of you. I was already planning to return to the country to further develop the coal corporation. This is just a way to make an example of him. She saw Ethan again a month later. Arson, leading the coal corporation, had seized all of Lancaster's projects and partnerships with lightning speed. 3 days ago, the Lancaster Corporation had filed for bankruptcy. "Nina, now that I have nothing, can you forgive me?" Nina looked at the once arrogant Ethan, now being chased away by security guards. She felt a sense of satisfaction at his comeuppance, as well as a sigh at the unpredictability of fate. "Ethan, I have something for you. It's something I promised someone I would do." Hope immediately flared in Ethan's eyes. "What is it?" Nina turned slightly and then, with all her might, slapped him hard across the face with her right hand. Slap! The crisp, clear sound echoed, drawing the attention of passers-by. Amidst Ethan's stunned expression, Nina turned and walked away with a flourish. Humming a cheerful tune, Nina got into Arson's black Cullinan. Arson nodded and applauded her. "You finally fulfilled your promise to Dr. Arson. I thought you had forgotten." Nina laughed out loud. "How could I forget? I put all my strength into that slap. Did you see his crooked face?" "But," Nina frowned and rubbed her red palm, "his skin is too thick. My hand is all red from slapping him." Arson took her hand with a pained expression and gently blew on her palm. Nina didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You're a doctor. Is this how you treat a patient's pain?" The next second, a kiss landed on her palm. Nina's heart suddenly raced. She tried to pull her hand away, but Arson held it tight. He looked at her, his eyes overflowing with love. "Nina, let me come to your side, okay?" Nina was silent for a moment, then nodded firmly. That powerful slap had not only swept away the humiliation of the past, but had also ushered in a brand new life for her. And Ethan, left behind clutching his cheek, would never be able to keep up with Nina's brave steps forward.